talk about how you practically go about positioning a brand. First of all, we have to understand what positioning is, of course. And positioning is the space that you or your product occupies in the mind of the customer. Positioning is how the customer thinks about your product or service. And that means that positioning cannot be controlled or managed, but it can only be influenced. Let's use a quick example. Volvo, if you go to their website today, you'll see that they're trying to suggest that their cars are all about adventure and technology and so forth. But when the customer thinks about Volvo, they think it's the safest car in the world. So once a customer thinks about your product in a certain way, it's very difficult to actually change how they think about it. So when you embark on this journey, it's very important that you get it right, that you start off on the right foot. There are 4 basic steps that you follow to go through this process. And these steps are: you create a list of benefits that your customers typically look for when they buy your product or service or visit your establishment or come to your retail store. I would suggest that you actually only focus on 1 or 2, even 1 if you can. So follow the Pareto principle, that 80-20 principle. Focus on the things that really, really matter for the customer. Step 2 is to create a list of things that you're very good at, because these are the things that you're going to leverage your point of difference, your strengths, in order to deliver those benefits better than your competition. The third step is then to put all of that together on a visual or graphic map. And so we use a matrix because we've got the 2 axes, the customer benefit and your strength. And you put that together, and then you basically plot where the competition sits and where you sit. And based on that outcome, you may decide to adopt that position, or you create another one to try and find one where you're actually a little bit different. And I'll show you how that plays out in a minute. You create the table, so list of customer benefits, list of company strengths or organizational brand strengths. You take that, you put it on a map. Customer benefits on one axis, company strength on another axis. It doesn't matter which goes where, it's really just a 2-dimensional map of how the customer might think about your product. This is how it would play out. If you have a number of strengths and a number of weaknesses, you might end up creating a whole number of different matrices. So you'll go about, plot your strength number 1 on a few, and then cross that with benefit number 1, benefit number 2, benefit number 3. And then you'll go about plotting those, and then you go to strength 2, and again, benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3, and so forth. So let's see how that works out. And I'm going to use music players to illustrate the initial idea, and then we're going to apply it to your brand and your establishment. Music players, if organizations think about what customers might want, so cast your mind back maybe 15 years or so, the market was dominated by Sony, Walkman, Microsoft, and a few other brands like that. The benefit that everybody thought customers wanted was as small as possible, with as much capacity as possible, as cheaply as possible. Let's pick a company and let's call it Microsoft or Sony or whatever. They would go and say, right, my strengths are engineering, distribution, economies of scale. The customer benefit for Apple, when they looked at it, they ignored size, capacity, and costs. And it's not as if those things aren't true, but they looked at the customer and they thought that they had a better handle on what the customers really, really wanted. And so they looked at it and they said, customers want to be able to take it with them. They want the unit or the player to be cool because they're going to wear it on their hip and it's almost like a piece of jewelry. And they wanted access to music. And so the company has their strengths, so they can also use their engineering and so forth to deliver on those benefits. So if you put the music players on a matrix, the company might pick one of their strengths, engineering quality, pick a customer need, size, plot everybody, and you'll see that everybody is kind of in the same space. Then from an Apple perspective, they went and remember they identified, okay, we're also good at engineering, but we think it's about access to music. I could put in there, for instance, cool design or whatever. And if you then replot where the competition is and where Apple was, you'll see that, okay, everybody's in that corner. Yep, the engineering quality is still good, but now Apple is the only one that gives people access to their music via the iTunes store. Or if that was on that access, even cool design, then Apple would be the only one that looks cool and everything else look like a brick. So now what's happened is you've got blue ocean. Down at the bottom you have all the sharks putting blood in the water because they're all fighting for the same market and for the same with the same products, which are essentially undifferentiated. And Apple alone is in that top corner, and that's why the iPod was such a success. If you now do the same thing with a venue, typically venues fight around, food prices, wanting to offer good meals, lots of family activities and good service. So all the obvious things. And the strengths of the venue might be a whole range of different things. Of course, it'll be different for every venue. But if you take your venue and you say, I think actually customers want something different. They still want, obviously, all those other things. They don't go away. Those other needs don't go away. It's just about how you are perceived in the mind of the customer. They might still come to you for a cheap meal, but if you are differentiated because you're going after providing them with great learning opportunities with, say, seminars and conferences and learning how to cook and craft school and kids club and so forth, then you occupy a differentiated space. So you will use your strength, whatever that might be, the size of the venue or the range of activities on offer, and you compete with that strength to deliver a particular benefit that nobody else does. Let's look again at the examples. Service quality and cheap food. Everybody goes and sits in that corner, right? They all do low-priced food at reasonable or good service levels. So competitive, blood in the water, everybody fighting for the same market. If you then are smart enough to position yourself in such a way that you occupy a space that is not as competitive, you'll find that your competitors sit there, not many activities, not really focused on delivering on those learning opportunities, and you go and you deliver in the high end of those two. You deliver in the high end of learning opportunities using the strength that you've got in terms of all the activities that you can offer to occupy that space. So then again, same as Apple, it's blue ocean, right? You've got relative open space around you, relatively low noise. When the customers think about a particular need, then you are the only one that comes to mind. To summarize very briefly, first of all, list the benefits that your customers are looking for. Secondly, list what you're good at. Thirdly, create that mental mind map, or that matrix that demonstrates visually or graphically how you sit vis-a-vis your competitors. And then finally, plot all of that out and then make a decision. There is actually a fifth step that I haven't told you about, and that is that once you've executed those 4 steps, do the next thing, and that is execute. All of this is just theory. If all that you do is just go through a process, have a workshop, draw pretty pictures, but you never execute, you will never be differentiated. You'll never be able to compete. And that is how you position a brand. Thanks for listening.